Good evening. I'd like to thank you all for coming out. This is a pretty important day and a pretty important election year. My name is Louis Almayu, and I'm on the board of directors, one of the board of directors of Community Power. Community Power and MN350 are putting together these energy forums for the ward and mayoral races because we care about our energy future and our future as a whole. Minneapolis and its residents spend $450 million on gas and electric utilities each year. In order to have some control over these expenditures and what they produce, for example, impacts on economic opportunity, health, housing stability, and climate resilience are some of what's at stake. We in Minneapolis designed the first in the nation Clean Energy Partnership. The partnership provides our representatives at the City Council a say in our energy choices and a choice in questions in our energy future. We brought together Minneapolis Ward 9 candidates for questions and answers on this topic. Right now I want to introduce Tim Springer, who's going to tell you some about some energy changes that are happening right here.
Actually, we picked this location for our candidate forum tonight because there's 21 new photovoltaic panels on the south side of the field house. Did you see those? So I learned from the park board a little bit about that. They cost $54,770. They went online with the new electric meter with Excel on February 14. It's part of, so they were installed by Graybar, Sundial Solar. Partners are Excel Energy and Sustology. The approximate size is 7 kilowatts. They will save about 5.9 metric tons of carbon dioxide per year. Annual electric savings for the park board, $18,400, which is 6.8% of the electric usage of this particular facility. And the money came from the Excel Energy Renewable Development Fund, a grant for almost $1 million. There were 5 different locations where solar panels went in on park board facilities. This is one of them. Also, the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board Sustainability Fund kicked in $100,000, and then in-kind park board staff time. So overall, all of the facilities that have gone in on this and the other properties will save about $28,000 a year for the park board electricity costs. And if you take a look at them when you're outside, they're up there. And if you have any other questions, I can refer you to the park board person that shared this information with me. Thanks for coming tonight.
All right. Please keep in mind this evening that Community Power and Minnesota 350 do not and will not endorse any particular candidates or parties. Now for the ground rules. The ground rules for this evening will be as follows. The candidates will be given 2 minutes each to introduce themselves, lay out a quick biography, and give us a brief idea of their energy vision for the city. Then we will ask the prepared energy questions formulated by Community Power and NN350 for this evening's forum. Candidates will have 90 seconds to answer each question and should all keep an eye on our intrepid timekeeper. Who will warn each candidate when they have 30 seconds remaining and when you're about to run out of time and need to stop.
Now when you are out of time,
So, if you begin to exceed your time limit, our moderator will cut you off. To ensure a fair process, we will be alternating the order of answers for each question so that no candidate can attain a significant advantage. Our prepared questions will take us to about 7:30 p.m. during this first section of the forum, if you have specific energy questions that you think your neighbors should hear their candidates' answers, bring them up to our question screener, right there. Another Timothy. Because once our prepared questions have been answered, we will ask your questions until just before our closing time at 8 p.m. Remember to write legibly. At which time we will close the formal questions and answer portion of the forum and break into the informal segment of the evening, where we encourage you to discuss with your neighbors, meet with our candidates, and help us clean up. We are scheduled to be out of this room by 8 p.m., and we ask that you help us keep that deadline. So, before we hear from our candidates, we're pleased to have Fair Vote Minnesota here to share a quick educational note about ranked choice voting, which is a voting system used for our elections.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Raise your hand if you've used ranked choice voting before. Look at that, a room full of pros. So I'll just rehash just a little bit. Pretty easy. Rank your candidates in order of preference. 1, 2, 3. So yeah, think as you're listening today, think not only who your favorite is, but maybe who you would vote second and third. Just a reminder that putting a second and a third choice will never harm your first choice vote. And so if you want to have full power of your ballot, rank the whole dang thing. So if someone hits 50% threshold, that first round, done, winner. But if no one gets that 50% threshold, it will be the lowest vote getter whose second choices will be redistributed until there is a 50% plus 1 majority. So that's really exciting. The next person that is mayor, city council, and park board will have a broad support. But all you really need to remember is 1, 2, 3. That's all I got.
So before I turn it over to Patty, I was asked to share a bit of art and culture before we dug in. It looks to me like there's quite a few people here from my generation, 50 or older. And I know that for us, we've seen a lot of changes through the 20th century, the last half of it. And I think we're in for a century that's going to mean constant change, dramatic change. Change no living person has ever seen before. So that means we have to be resilient people, we have to be creative people, we have to be compassionate people, because to deal with the challenges that we have right now, we have to come together across all kinds of identities to address the challenges that are before us today. If we still want to have good food, clean water, and energy to heat or cool our homes, we're going to have to really have a different culture in order to care for ourselves. So, the name of this very short poem is called We Must Let Go. We must let go of the way we are living just to survive here, just to get by here, in fabricated places where we just endure here, clinging to all the manufactured illusions of joy, when rationally, there shouldn't be any joy here this way. Let's let go of our air-conditioned hell. We manifest hell in places we never have to look at, with the kind assistance of those with a price. There is another land of cool streams and radiant skies. In the realm of the heart, paradise can be now. Dear friends, loosen your grip on luxuriant lies before they're ripped from you. All will be lost, and all can be gained.
Thanks, Louis. Hello, thank you for being here tonight. My name is Patty O'Keefe. I work with an organization called Minnesota 350, and we are a partner with Community Power on these candidate forums that are being hosted around the city in lead up to the election. So as Louis said, we are going to have a segment of prepared questions first, where I will ask 8 questions to both Alondra and Gary. And then after that, we will take questions from the audience and have an opportunity for you to really engage and get some answers to the questions that are on your minds. But before I jump in, one of the candidates for Ward 9 was not able to be here with us tonight. Mohamed Farah, he actually came by earlier and dropped off a personal note. He was feeling pretty sick, so I just wanted to read that before we get started. So Mohamed said, "I really apologize that I cannot be with you tonight. I have been sick since yesterday and have food poisoning. I am not in good health to be here. The topics for tonight are very dear to me and they are part of my priorities. I will answer the questions that were asked tonight and will publish them soon. For any questions, please call me or text me at 651-795-1589. I will leave this up here so you can get his number. My door is always open. I hope to gain your trust and partnership to better our world and city. Thank you again." So that is from Mohamed Farah, was the 3rd candidate. So let's jump in. So first, you're going to have 2 minutes, each of you, to just give a little bit more info on yourselves, introduce yourselves, and talk about your energy vision for the city of Minneapolis. So we are going to start with Alondra Cano, and then we'll move to you.
Buenas tardes, gracias por estar aquí. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Alondra Cano, and as a mother of 3 young boys growing up here in Phillips, I've fiercely defended the community's Green Zones vision. And I just want to say that today, the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee did approve a Green Zones designation for East Phillips and for Little Earth, as well as one in North Minneapolis. And so that's thanks to all of the work that people have been doing to reclaim our transit-oriented development future, to fight back against previous council decisions to continue to industrialize and pollute our neighborhoods. And so I'm running for re-election because I believe that together we have built a powerful voice for the environment and for our children. And I want to make sure that as we move forward for the next 4 years, we're leading Minneapolis with a radical vision of environmentalism. One where we don't have to choose between having clean air and clean water or workers' rights. I believe we can achieve it together, and I know that I've seen how well we've worked in the past to achieve that power change and that power dynamic on the council to ensure that folks who care about our communities from a racial equity perspective and an environmental justice perspective can have a clear impact. So thank you. I ask for your support in the November election as well as on April 29th when we have the DFO endorsing convention.
Hi everyone, my name is Gary Schiff. Thank you so much for being here today. Many of you know me from my years of community activism and from my time on the Minneapolis City Council. For those of you who don't, I've lived within 3 blocks of Lake Street since I was 19 years old. I've been a community activist who's worked together with you, with these neighborhoods, to advance incredible policy forward for the City Council. Policy that continues to influence and encourage and inspire us in all the work we do today. The vision for Green Zones was first laid out in the Community Action Plan against global warming, the Climate Action Plan that was approved by the City Council in 2013. Before that, it was the Sustainability Plan that I authored my first term in office. Since then, there have been almost 20 different action plans approved by the City Council, but words aren't going to do it enough. We need to take action. I'm proud to work with progressive activists across this city to recognize that our neighborhoods are activist communities, where people work together to pass policy, to make a permanent difference. We need designations, but we need actions. We need ordinances. We need laws to make sure that we don't lose the progress that we gain, no matter how much and how many threats come from the Oval Office. My vision for the community I want to share with you, it's one for reliable energy, with sustainable, produced, and equitably distributed energy. It's a place where future families don't have to choose between medicine and between their heating bill. I want to make sure that we're able to take our power back from the power companies and that we can determine our own future as a community for reliable, renewable, clean, affordable energy, and I'm excited tonight to lay out my vision for how we get there. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much. All right, so I'm going to start in now with these 8 questions, and we will swap order each time we go, and I will reread the question for each of you, so you'll get to hear it again right before you answer it. So this time we'll start with Gary, and then we'll go to Alondra. So changes will be coming to the Roof Depot site. What will you do as the Ward 9 City Council member to pursue opportunities for energy efficiency and renewable energy at that site?
Sure. Well, the purchase of the Roof Depot site was very disappointing to me. It was purchased by the City Council on a 12-to-1 vote. It's rare that a City Council member does not win a vote on an important city infrastructure investment in their own district. Now that it's going forward, as the current council has dictated, I think it's important for the community to come together to lay a future for how that site is going to contribute to the East Phillips community, but also to all the neighborhoods around East Phillips as well. We need to make sure that what happens on that site is done in partnership with the property next door. The City of Minneapolis owns the LEED certified, platinum certified Hiawatha Public Works facility next door. It's the most environmentally sustainable, municipally owned facility in the state of Minnesota. It shows what we can do when we work together, when we set high goals, and we're able to let a new vision for a sustainable future affect our community. The old site of the Hiawatha Public Works used to be 100% impervious. Today, 100% of the groundwater is managed on site. I want to set high standards so that the new building, whatever it may be, has a place for reliable energy, is able to contribute to a resilient economy for the local neighbors, and that means training people. Open a gateway to the trades. So when the City of Minneapolis is adding jobs in the East Phillips neighborhood, let's make sure that city residents get those jobs first. Let's partner with our job training organizations, with MCTC, and let's make sure that we use resiliency to build our neighborhood stronger.
All right. So same question, Councilmember Cano. Changes will be coming to the Roof Depot site. What will you do, would you do as the Ward 9 City Council member to pursue opportunities for energy efficiency and renewable energy?
Sure. Thank you. So as many of you recall, our neighborhood and myself opposed the purchase of the Roof Depot site for further industrializing our neighborhoods, which was a plan that was part of the City Council for many years prior to the time I got there. I was really thankful to fight shoulder to shoulder with you to advocate for our future and our kids' future in this community. We had the support of Councilmember Glidden, Councilmember Cam Gordon, and Councilmember Andrew Johnson when we had that struggle and when we pushed back, which luckily gave birth to the establishment of the green zones, which again we approved today and we hope to officially approve on the council in about 2 weeks. So through that work, we've been engaging with city staff and with neighborhood residents to secure a federal grant that's going to help us build community solar power on the site. There is also a site guidelines committee that has been created thanks to your voice and your requests to have more participation in that project. And that work group is actually working with our city staff to define what portion of the building and the site will be used for private redevelopment that will hopefully have local food hubs, we'll have greenhouses where we can grow our local foods and make sure that our young people have something that they can connect to when it comes to learning about Mother Earth and how to ensure that we're protecting her and that we are building a future of sustainability. Additionally, we're working with State Representative Karen Clark, who has a bill at the state that will also bring funding to ensure that we continue to support the sustainability of that project.
Okay, so right back to you, Councilmember Cano. How do racial and economic justice factor into your approach to addressing climate change and the transition to a clean energy economy?
When it comes to issues of racial justice, as we look at our future of sustainability and undoing environmental racism and institutional racism in the city, there are different ways to analyze that issue. And so one way is to advance and continue to advocate for our $15 an hour minimum wage, because we know that with climate change, the communities that are going to be more disproportionately impacted by the changes in our weather and the severe, whether it's a rainstorm or whether it's these extreme changes between the heat and the summertime, it's going to disproportionately impact low-income communities, communities of color, indigenous communities. And so that's why we have to both ensure that we have safe and secure affordable housing for our communities, that we are advancing a minimum wage agenda so that our folks can be better supported to be able to adapt to those changes. Additionally, we need to do more work, like the green zones work that has happened, to ensure that people who are directly impacted by those changes are leading those solutions, are leading the conversations, and that we as municipal government are listening to those community members and aligning our resources, priorities, and policies behind the experts of the folks who are actually experiencing these changes in very dramatic ways.
Thank you. All right, and Gary, same question. How do racial and economic justice factor into your approach in addressing climate change and in the transition to a clean energy economy?
We have a lot of work we need to do to tackle climate change in the city of Minneapolis. We have a climate action plan, but we need action. We need that action from council members to put it into effect. I believe that low-income communities, particularly in the 9th Ward, are the most affected by climate change. Our economy is too centered on cars. Our water is not clean enough. The air isn't clean enough. Anything that we can do to improve access to programs that help renters with energy bills, anything that makes homeowners able to take their homes and do energy improvements like inclusive financing. These are things that are going to help us as we not only fight climate action plan, global warming, but that we also are able to help the communities that are most affected by global warming. I remember when the Roof Depot site first went for sale. It was Salvation Army wanted to build housing for people coming out of prison on that site. That was not, high-density housing was not consistent with the community plan, and the rezoning that was going to be necessary for that would not be approved by the community. So the building went back on the market and was never proposed to be a city-owned site when I was on the council. And I think we need to make sure that when we address renters' issues, we are making sure that we are having the landlords pass those benefits on to the renters. So if we do inclusive financing for new roofs, white roofs, solar panels on the roofs, we're also making sure that we have transparency for renters. So when you rent your apartment, maybe you're stuck with a 40-year-old refrigerator that's paying half your energy costs, but you see the ticket price up front.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to our next question, and then that'll go back to you, Gary. So the city's climate action plan and energy vision goals include having 75% of all housing in the city, including single-family and multifamily residential homes, get energy efficiency improvements that will reduce their energy bills by 2025. So how would you ensure that renters have access to clean energy and energy efficiency services in your report?
So the first thing is to pass inclusive financing at the Public Utilities Commission. I know how to work with the energy companies, and I know how to lobby the Public Utilities Commission and win. The city of Minneapolis was faced with high voltage power lines over the Midtown Greenway just a few years ago. We took our case as a legal intervener with the power of the city attorney's office to the Public Utilities Commission. We fought and we won those lines to be buried at no extra expense for city taxpayers. That's what we need to do again for inclusive financing. We need to build a coalition, bring the city's voice to the table, and make sure that we're working hand in hand with utility companies to pass an inclusive financing model that will be the best in the nation that we've seen yet. We also have to make sure that our Affordable Housing Trust Fund has standards for new construction of affordable housing when it comes to energy requirements. Today, there's not a single unit of affordable housing under construction in the 9th Ward. I will work to make sure that not only we build affordable housing, but that we put the standards in place so that that new affordable housing lifts people out of poverty by cutting their energy bills and making sure that we are building inclusively forward with a sustainable model for everyone.
All right, same question, Councilmember Cano. The city's climate action plan and energy vision goals include having 75% of all housing in the city including single-family, multifamily homes, get energy efficiency improvements that will reduce their energy bills by 2025. How would you ensure that renters have access to clean energy and energy efficiency services in wartime?
Thank you so much for that question. I think one thing that we need to definitely support is what Gary Schiff just mentioned, which is the inclusive financing model. And that's a way that we can ensure that our local families and the folks in our community can be able to pay off some of these improvements without having upfront costs or without having to incur extra debt or have to go through some credit score challenges, which we know for low-income communities is tough. Additionally, I think what we also need to do is leverage the negotiations that we will have to begin again with our clean energy and through our clean energy partnership and our utilities companies, because pretty soon we're going to have to renew that agreement. And so by the time 2018 comes around and we're coming to the table to talk about whether or not we met our goals, we really need to be able to leverage that conversation and push harder to see what solutions these energy companies are going to bring forward to our residents. On top of that, I just want to share that we are working with our city attorney's office on a rent escrow program, which will make it so that the landlords in our community who are not making those energy improvements on those homes or those rental units, that the renters can actually withhold some of the rent until those improvements are made. And so the idea is really to find ways to incentivize our landlords to do the right thing, not only for the environment, but for the people who are living in these places. Whether it's an apartment building or a home that they're renting, a duplex, we want to make sure that we're working hard to incentivize those landlords to do the right thing.
Thank you. And then this is next question coming back to you. What are the barriers you currently see keeping Minneapolis from addressing climate change and achieving a 100% renewable energy by 2030? And how do you believe we can address those barriers?
I think some of the biggest challenges that we have in that arena are, number one, the political will. We need to have council members who are the majority on the council that have the political will and belief that we can overcome the climate challenges, that it's not a joke and that it's not a lie, that we can actually align our budget and our priorities, whether they're policies or programs, to really advance Minneapolis in that arena and also lead the nation. So for example, the Clean Energy Partnership is something that a lot of people now uphold as a positive example, and that came from you, the community. You all mobilized, you all worked on a grassroots campaign that impacted the political process to ensure that that became a priority for people who are elected. And so in that way, we have to find ways to resource community-based groups to advance the campaigns and build a people power that will hold elected officials accountable to a better energy future, to a better energy vision. So in addition to that, I would say that we also have to make sure that we are generating enough ideas and connections in our communities to bring forward this notion of radical environmentalism. So how can we think outside of the box, outside of the limits that are being imposed on us, whether it's by capitalism or by the current corporations and the structures that they have, and learn from examples all over Latin America. Many of our communities come from indigenous communities where our indigenous technology existed before electricity, before all of these other mechanisms that have extracted resources from our neighborhoods. So how can we look back at our family lineage, our cultures, our communities, and bring forward ideas that are not on the table today?
Thank you. All right, same question. Gary, what are the barriers you currently see keeping Minneapolis from addressing climate change and achieving 100% renewable energy by 2030, and how would you address those barriers?
I think the city needs to lead the way as a property owner and make sure that the city first is taking care of city properties to reduce our carbon emissions and to reduce our energy use of city buildings. I think we also need to work with the private sector to help keep costs low for small business owners and help with financing programs so that small businesses can afford the investment in their own properties and be able to share the cost long-term as members of the community. There's so much we can do. There's so much we can do. Our community is full of incredible activists who are full of ideas. The only thing that's stopping us is time and the current political leadership in the Ninth Ward. I believe that there's just too much division. there's too much disruption and there's too much distraction. I think we need more cooperation in our politics. I think we need more dialogue in our politics. And I think we need more action in our politics. I'm so inspired by the leadership of people like Councilmember Cam Gordon or Councilmember Elizabeth Glidden. Each of them have authored over 30 progressive ordinances in the last 3 years. I'm so grateful for their leadership. The incumbent for the 9th Ward has only authored 1 ordinance in the last 3 years. The average is 20. So what we need is more action and less talk. What we need is someone who can work with the community to take their great ideas and turn them into action. And that's why I'm running for city councils, because I know this is an activist community. We need an activist legislator.
All right, and then the next question, back to you, Gary, is right now, utility energy programs provide savings opportunities to people who can already afford thousands of dollars in upfront costs or can take out personal loans of several $1,000s to make needed energy improvements in their homes. What would you do to ensure that everyone can participate in the clean energy economy in Ward 9?
Sure. I think for everyone to participate, we need to eliminate the barriers, and some of those barriers have already been discussed. The 2 biggest barriers is access to capital and access to credit. If you are subject to a credit check, you may not be able to afford the solar panels or the new solar shingles in your house. So we need to find ways such as the Inclusive Utility Program for inclusive financing. It spreads out the cost on all energy bills. It allows people to recognize the savings in their energy bills as time goes on. I've talked previously about having transparency in utility bills for renters so that when they go to rent, they know what they can expect to pay in the months and the years ahead. I think we also need to make sure that we're creating jobs and thinking sustainably about how we can create a renewable economy. So when the city of Minneapolis is working with solar farms, we're also working with our job training programs to give jobs to local residents, have zip code hiring, make sure we're meeting our underutilized minority and women business goals, and make sure that we are working together as an economic and as a social equitable framework. The fight against global warming, I believe, gives us one of the best tools to come together as a community and really take the benefits and spread them out and find a way to fight poverty through energy investments. I think it's not only reasonable, I think it's absolutely essential.
Thank you. And then same question now to Alondra. Right now, utility energy programs provide savings opportunities to people who can already afford thousands of dollars in upfront costs and take out personal loans to make needed energy improvements in their homes. What would you do to ensure that everyone in Ward 9 can participate in the clean energy economy?
Thank you. As we discussed, for low-income communities and communities of color, communities who come from low wealth areas or communities where, again, resource extraction has been the legacy since the age of slavery and colonization, leading to what we now see as the deep structural inequities in our communities. In order to support those communities to really be able to benefit from the energy investments that we're seeing happening all over the nation and even locally, such as the Roof Depot when we were able to secure the solar panel grants, we need to be able to couple those with a strong partnership with our landlords through our Regulatory Services Department to ensure that we have programs like I mentioned, the rent escrow program where renters can withhold some of their rent if the landlords are not making the improvements that they need in order to ensure that those energy savings are happening. We also need to be able to figure out how do we leverage the Clean Energy Partnership and the decision around whether or not we increase the franchise fee so that some of the dollars from those corporations are reinvested into our community to help the low-income residents and support our struggling families who will never be able to come up with $10,000 to put a solar panel on their home or on their rental unit. So we should be able to figure out how this utility franchise fee can really be leveraged to reinvest in our communities and provide our people with community benefits agreements that will help build the infrastructure for an energy system that can divest from the fossil fuel industry.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to our next question, and back to you, Alondra. Community solar gardens are a relatively new opportunity for Minneapolis residents to go solar. What is their greatest benefit, in your opinion, and how would you harness the resources of the city and your influence as a city council member to make optimal use of community solar gardens for residents in Ward 9?
We've seen some really powerful examples of successful community solar projects, specifically the one in North Minneapolis with Shiloh Temple. And I think that we need to be able to pilot more of those programs. And so again, it goes back to the political will of the council to be able to identify resources that can be put into a pilot program to be able to prioritize the implementation and the testing phase of some of these ideas. As you might recall, back in 2014, I led the advocacy to restore money into our Clean Energy Partnership Program because some other council members wanted to cut it. And so you both have to be figuring out how to do a proactive approach at figuring out how we can resource these pilot programs that I think could really provide some examples and lessons that can be shared across the entire grid by ensuring that our companies are also participating with our franchise partners because they see the future. Now they're seeing that there's incentives, monetary incentives to be made in transitioning our economy. And so with that, the community solar approach, the other component that's really important is to recognize that it's a cooperative economics model, which is another kind of economic system that we as a city need to be able to better embrace and build on the cooperative legacy that we have in Minnesota, starting all the way from the farming communities, and now that we see like at the Wedge and at Seward, and now we're developing actually a commercial land trust model. So being able to leverage those two initiatives, cooperative economics pilot project with the city, coupled with our community solar efforts.
Thank you. All right, and same question, Gary. Community solar gardens are a relatively new opportunity for Minneapolis residents to go solar. What are their greatest benefit, in your opinion, and how would you harness the resources of the city council and your influence as a council member to make optimal use of community solar gardens for Ward 9?
Well, the benefits will lower utility bills, will also create us an opportunity to create jobs for city residents during the installation of these solar gardens. And I think it's going to be very similar to the impact that Community Garden has had on our community. When the Community Garden movement helped bring neighbors together around food and was able to get the conversation going about where people get their food from, how we connect to the earth, how we pass on agriculture to the next generation, and how we show our values by reducing our footprints and making sure that our food is locally sourced. The same thing can happen to energy, and community gardens, solar gardens, are the same way that we can get there. I think there's also a way to benefit homeowners and renters that live on the same block together. The city of Minneapolis has a tiered rental system for landlords. If you have the highest, best apartment building in the city of Minneapolis, you're at tier 1. Now, I have some problems with the current city rankings. The buildings owned by Steve Friends and Spiro Zabalas formerly, I believe, are some of the worst buildings in the city of Minneapolis. It should be anything but tier 1. And however, the city disagrees, and they have them as tier 1 today. But we should be able to use tier 3, tier 2 rankings of apartment buildings to incentivize landlords to participate in programs like community solar gardens and pass the benefits on to their renters.
So we have 2 more questions, and then we're going to go to the audience. So, all right, we'll finish up with this, and then we'll move on. So, Gary, back to you. We have a first-in-the-nation clean energy partnership between the city and its energy utilities. What would you do to evaluate if the utilities are being good partners, and how would you hold them accountable if they are not?
Well, the Clean Energy Partnership Plan right now calls for the city to evaluate in 2018 the success of the partnership to date and to consider what the tools are being decided right now of how to measure them. What are the outcomes we want for energy costs? What are the sources? How renewable are they? And who are the users and who has access to them? So the time from now through 2018 is going to be the time to lay out those benchmarks We decide what we're going to use to evaluate it, and at that point, we decide we either go it alone by ourselves into the future, or we renew for the next 5 years our current utility franchise agreement. I know that Councilmember Elizabeth Glidden is retiring. It's going to be a sad loss to the City Council. I'm prepared to step in with the leadership that she's had on the lead committee that manages this process. And if not, if my colleagues step into that role, I'm ready to support them in any way so that they are successful. But I know there's going to be a leadership change no matter what, and I want to be able to work to bring people together to make sure that this works. The alternative, as you might remember, came from a conversation about city-owned utilities. I don't want to spend your tax dollars buying an outdated system that's inefficient, that's based on fossil fuel consumption, and that is anything but a smart grid. I want to make sure that we're investing in new, clean, reliable energy, smart grid technology, and make sure that we're working with utility companies to make that happen.
Thank you. And then Alondra, same question. We have a first in the nation clean energy partnership between the city and its energy utilities. What would you do to evaluate if the utilities are being good partners, and how would you hold them accountable if they are not?
Sure. So that work in terms of evaluating the effectiveness of the Clean Energy Partnership begins right now. We will get to a point in 2018 where those decisions and those votes will be made about whether or not we continue with that partnership with our utility and with our utility companies. And at this moment, we need to begin those conversations. We need to begin the conversations with the community-based experts and the community leaders that were the visionary architects of the Clean Energy Partnership before it even was a Clean Energy Partnership. So those conversations need to begin now. That community organizing process needs to begin now. That empowerment of those voices need to begin at this moment. We cannot wait until the last minute when the vote is coming on the floor, and we won't have a lot of choices. And so through that, we can start to begin looking at the benchmarks that have been met, if we're making progress fast enough or not fast enough on the future of our community. I mean, that's really what's at stake here. And then we also need to figure out what is it that we're going to bring to the table in terms of negotiations for how we're going to really thoroughly incentivize these companies to do the right thing. And I am actually a supporter of municipalizing our energy systems. I think that that is one of the best ways to popularize and to really give people their own power that has been taken away through years and years of disinvestment, exploitation, and resource extraction. I think there is a way. I think we have to come together and put together a plan that's going to be reliable and realistic.
Thank you. All right, and then the next question, this will come back to you, Alondra. How should the city of Minneapolis handle doing business with industries or companies whose activities compromise the city's climate and equity goals?
So as you might recall, I was the lead author of the resolution and staff direction that approved the city to begin the process of divesting from companies like Wells Fargo because of their investment in the Dakota Access Pipeline and in the fossil fuel industry. And as such, I think that that is actually one of the biggest ways that we can hold companies accountable to a racial justice and an environmental justice agenda is by looking at the way that your taxpayer dollars are being invested through the city, through our banking operations and our own investment portfolio. And so this summer, we will see a report back from our staff letting us know what are other options that we can do in terms of where the city of Minneapolis can put its money so that we are aligning ourselves with more socially responsible banking partners who won't take advantage of the environment or the people who are banking with them or through them. I think it's really important that as we look forward, that we begin to realize that that conversation has a lot of power and depth. Just by approving that divestment staff direction last December, which was approved 13-0, and I'm very thankful of Councilmember Gordon, who was a leader with me on that and other initiatives on the City Council on environmental justice, that more banks actually stepped up and said, we want to partner with you. We hear you're looking for other partners who are not investing in the fossil fuel industry. That's us. Can we please have a conversation? So those small things that we're doing are actually having such a big impact that sometimes it's a little bit harder to capture.
Thank you. All right, and then Gary, same question. How should the city of Minneapolis handle doing business with industries or companies whose activities compromise the city's climate and equity goals?
Sure. I support the divestment resolution that's before the city council that asks us to move our money where our mouth is and to make sure that our money sits in banks that support our goals, whether they're equity goals or whether they are reducing racial disparity goals. We have to be careful if we're going to stop doing business with Wells Fargo or US Bank to find someone else willing to engage with all of our housing mortgage programs that are so essential for first-time homeowners. But beyond that, we also have to look at who we purchase from, whether the city purchases asphalt from someone like Bituminous Roadways, or whether the city works with a foundry in order to buy materials for city construction sites. We need to recognize that those employers are creating jobs for city residents. If we don't want to do business with them anymore, we have to figure out where the jobs are going to go in the future. We can't just tell a business, no, we don't want to do anything with you anymore. We're going to buy from elsewhere, and then hurt our own community in our pocketbook and hurt our social equity goals. I think that we also need to make sure that when we're working with a company like Bituminous Roadways or working with a foundry, that we're able to tell them, you can't expand. We're going to downzone your properties, and that you must plan a future that calls for expansion to be done elsewhere in another place. I'm very happy that these industrial users in the East Phillips neighborhood have been downzoned, and that they have to go through a lot of thresholds in order to aggregate any expansion.
And so let's just give a round of applause Now we are going to move into the second phase of the evening, which is hearing from all of you and getting some of your questions answered. So it's going to be the same format. Timothy here is going to be giving me some of these questions, and then I will ask them, and then we'll swap order to make sure that's fair.
So I'm going to give you a first set now, and I'm going to keep collecting and sorting, and if we fold it together, you might want to get the questions.
Okay, sounds good.
Anybody else?
Okay, so let's see. We ended with Gary, so we will go back to Gary and start with a question around affordable housing. So, one, what have you done in the past to work on the issue of affordable housing, and how do you plan on increasing accessibility to affordable housing in Ward 9?
Sure. I was a co-author of the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and in my 12 years on the city council, the 9th Ward produced 549 new units of rent-controlled affordable housing. This includes affordable housing with supportive services to help distinct populations, like services for formerly homeless people with HIV and AIDS, built in Clare Midtown on 23rd Avenue South, or services built for American Indian teen moms, like the building at 34th and Cedar, or housing for American Indian elders, or housing for refugees. We need to combine social services with housing in order to help people put their lives back together. I also think that we need to address a new form of housing discrimination that is showing up. The newest building in the 9th Ward for affordable housing, Midtown Blue, I think is what it's called. Most of the housing units are really market rate, 50-60% of area median income. You need residency, you need a social security number to even apply. That means that no one who's undocumented in our city can even apply to get access to the money that our city has invested into affordable housing. So I want to make sure that our housing is accessible to people with documentation and not documentation, so that we're a true sanctuary city. And I also want to make sure that the council members engage with the essential steps of affordable housing: land acquisition, approval of zoning, financing of affordable housing. Your council member is essentially involved with every one of those steps, and that's what produces new affordable housing, and that's why I'm running for city council.
Thank you. And And then Alondra, same question. What have you done in the past to work on the issue of affordable housing, and how do you plan on increasing accessibility to affordable housing in Ward 9?
Sure. So for the affordable housing projects in the Ninth Ward, I've been lucky to have been able to work with two key developers who are doing a lot of work here for us. The Family Partnership and PPL are slated to do a new housing and headquarters for their nonprofit on the corner of Lake and Bloomington. Additionally, I want to just publicly thank Commissioner McLaughlin and the county for choosing the Hiawatha and Lake site as their future redevelopment for the Southside Hub, which will not only provide hundreds of units of housing, which will be mixed income, and also will provide a permanent home for the Midtown Farmers Market, as well as retail on the first floor for immigrant local entrepreneurs. Looking to the future, I was able to work with our city staff in our housing division to ensure that the city-owned lots that are in South Minneapolis are slated for long-term affordable home ownership. And so when you're talking about addressing gentrification, it is really important to do two things. Number one, to provide long-term opportunities for people to become homeowners, but also to legally protect the affordability formula in those ownership models that go above and beyond 10 to 15 to 20 years. We want to make sure that Minneapolis always remains affordable to families who are right now struggling to make ends meet. So through those three initiatives, I've been really proud to defend and protect the affordable components of housing in our city. I will just say that we are facing a challenge right now because there's a few folks who got together and put forward a complaint against HUD, claiming that we were concentrating too much affordable housing in the low-income, diverse areas of our city. And so that has actually put the city on a sort of holding pattern to reassess how we're doing housing choices throughout the city and where we put affordable housing investments. So right now we're still trying to work through that to ensure that the Ninth Ward can continue to have the robust investment it's had in the past.
Thank you. Next question, coming back to you, Alondra. What do you see as the future for neighborhood associations, and how can we work to empower neighborhood associations to help make the change that we need to see happen in the Ninth Ward?
Neighborhood associations in Minneapolis are very unique and powerful community-based organizing structure where we as the city put essentially your dollars back into your pocket so that through direct democracy and participation you can choose to engage and really have a say on a variety of issues. And for the Ninth Ward, I can say that we have very strong and active neighborhood associations that have been at the forefront of development projects, environmental justice projects like the Water Yard. In Central, we're doing a lot of work on crime and safety initiatives. In Midtown Phillips, we've looked a lot at the 26th and 28th traffic calming efforts. And so for me, the track record that I hold on the City Council is to continually invest in neighborhood associations. I would not like to cut them. I would not like to de-resource them. I think we need to better support that community-driven initiative to figure out how everyone in the neighborhood can participate in that. And in fact, a lot of the people in here today, and including myself, have had really strong engagements with neighborhood associations that provide an experience that really help you develop your leadership skills. I know that Margarita Ortega is here today. She's from our staff, and she was on the EPIC board as a vice president. I certainly participated when I lived in East Phillips. And so we have to look at this as a way where we can leverage our investments as a city to ensure that our democracy is not only strengthened by the policies and the proposals that are happening in City Hall, but by the people and by the voices and the priorities that you see are important, and neighborhood associations provide that direct contact.
And same question for Gary. What do you see as the future for neighborhood associations, and how can we work to empower neighborhood associations to make the change that they need to see happen in the Ninth Ward?
I remember serving on the Powder Park Neighborhood Association as being one of my first times seeing coalition politics at work. Prior to then, I'd worked as an AIDS activist and I'd worked in the gay rights movement. And it wasn't until I got to the neighborhood association that I was able to sit there with people very different than me, people who come from all walks of life, who only had one thing in common, and it wasn't their identity and it wasn't their income or what they did for a living. It was that they wanted to improve their neighborhood. And that was an ultimate leveler that I found made it really exciting and some of the most powerful organizing I've ever been a part of. I worry that the model of neighborhood organizing is going to be seen as a generational model, as something from the past, and that online activism is the new vogue. And I'm worried that we would not be able to sustain the infrastructure that we've set up for some 81 neighborhood organizations across the city of Minneapolis. I want to make sure that the funding is there long-term. It's about to run out. And I also want to make sure that we engage with neighborhoods to make sure that we are using them as the front lines of rebuilding a safety net in the city of Minneapolis. As these attacks come from the Oval Office, attacks on healthcare, attacks on mental health, attacks on our way of life, I want to make sure that neighborhood associations are our front line of defense. I think our neighborhood associations can help us reduce the suicide rate. I think our neighborhood associations can help us with racial equity gaps. I think our neighborhood associations have a wide range of mission to choose from in the future, and I want to work with them to make that possible.
All right, this is an interesting question, Gary. Do you, if someone has their mind made up about their first choice vote and it's not you, will you ask for their second choice vote, and what would you say?
Can I have your second vote? That's what I would say. Instant runoff voting, when I talk about it with voters at the door, I can kind of see people's eyes glaze over as they start talking about thresholds and second place and transferal. And I remember the first instant runoff voting election that we had in the city of Minneapolis. I was door knocking a senior high-rise, and the voting place was in the first floor. And I talked to some residents who said, "Oh, we love you, but we're not voting on Tuesday." I said, "Well, why? Are you going to the doctor? Are you going to be sick?" They said, "No, we know we like you, Gary, but we don't know the other people on the ballot. We don't know how to rank them." I said, "No problem. You can bullet ballot for just one person." Now, information about instant runoff voting has a lot more that needs to be told. Yes, you can vote for one person, but you can also vote for 2 or 3 people. You can rank all your choices. I have no problem asking people to rank me as their second choice. There are 3 candidates in this race. People who were at the night before caucuses saw the incredible diversity of the delegates. Some 50% of the delegates are Somali. And I think working with other communities through instant runoff voting really shows us the coalition power of electoral politics. I think there's a real strong message to be sent that no one can win an election on their own. We only win elections together when we come together on a common vision. So that's the campaign I'm running, and very comfortable asking people for their second choice.
All right, Alondra, same question. If someone has their mind made up about their first choice vote and it's not you, will you ask for their second choice vote, and what would you say?
Absolutely. If you are voting for somebody else as your first choice, I am here to ask you to please consider me for your second choice. Back in 2013, when we ran and won one of the most competitive races throughout the city, we won by 131 votes, and we did it by doing precisely what we just discussed. So I would go door to door, and even though there were long signs for other candidates, I would just talk to have a conversation with the person in the door, learn more about the issue that they cared about, talked about the priorities that they would like the city council to take on. We would have an opportunity for them to ask me questions, and I think that was a really fruitful conversation for both them and myself, our campaign, the other campaigns as well, because I think that then they provided this feedback loop about what folks really wanted to see in terms of the future of our city through the city council seat. And so there is no doubt that, you know, if you're running a strong campaign, a smart campaign, you're asking folks to participate in that ranked choice voting process, because it really, I believe, empowers democracy by having a much more robust and strong debate about the issues and the type of leadership that we need today and into the future. And then it also helps you to understand more about what are the needs and the issues and the priorities of our community members. So I'm very appreciative of the model that we have here in Minneapolis. I think it helps people participate at a higher level, and your vote doesn't just go away if you want to just choose one person. You can actually grow the presence of your voice throughout various campaigns.
All right, so this is a 2-part question here. Alondra, we'll start with you. First part is, I've heard a lot about green zones today in the presentation at the committee today, but I don't have a clear understanding of what they do and what the plan is for them. So I think just, what is your understanding of the value and benefit of green zones? And then the second part is, with the Metro Transit budget cuts being proposed, will we be able to maintain green zones?
Thank you for that question. So Green Zones is a project that we've been working on since day one in the Minneapolis City Council, and I'm really proud to have left the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee today with all of the council members there voting to approve a South Minneapolis Green Zones pilot program. And so the first step was to actually create a task force that would come up with the data and the information to identify 2 green zones in the city of Minneapolis based on racial inequities, environmental racism, and the opportunities we have to invest in that fossil fuel infrastructure, into the infrastructure that will move us away from the fossil fuel industry. And so the first step was to create the task force who came up with the designations. And so today we approved those designations. In 2 weeks, the full city council will officially adopt those designations. And then additionally, the next step embedded within that is to create the 2 pilot projects, one in North and one in South Minneapolis, that will begin to answer the question about what does a green zone do. So we want it to be very place-based. We want it to be led by the people who are impacted in these communities, who are going to come together through the open appointments process at the City of Minneapolis to serve on a body for 6 to 9 months that are going to create that work plan of what does a green zones designation do for this community. And so it's all very community-driven. It's going to be led by the people who are impacted by those inequities, and those are the folks that will bring forward the solutions that then the council will be asked to support.
Thank you. So same question, Gary. I've heard a lot about green zones today and the presentation at the committee, but I don't have a clear understanding of what they do and what the plan is for them. So just your idea of the value of green zones, and maybe how you think today's vote could impact the future of green zones in the city of Minneapolis and in the ward. And then with the Metro Transit budget cuts next year, will we be able to maintain green zones? So maybe what the future of green zones looks like.
Sure. Well, the green zones won't affect Metro Transit, so there will be no impact there, although Metro Transit is considering incredible fare increases right now that would disproportionately impact the city of Minneapolis and low-income communities of color that rely on bus service. So that needs to be addressed, and the city does need to find a way that we're not held hostage to a regional transportation system that doesn't respect us and only makes money off of the routes that make the most money, like the Lake Street route. On green zones, it was first recommended in the city's climate action plan in 2013 that the city start a green zone pilot project. 3.5 years later, we have a designation of 2 districts on the map, but now we're looking at another task force for another 6 to 9 months to make more recommendations for what comes next. I'm hearing a lot of task forces, I'm seeing a lot of meetings, and I love meetings, but I like action, and we need action. I was disappointed that there weren't suggested action steps other than another task force at the end of today's meeting. I am disappointed that it's taken us 3.5 years to only get to the point that we have North Minneapolis and South Minneapolis circled on the map. And I think that there's a lot of other things that we could be putting our energy into right now that we know will make a difference. We know energy improvements will reduce people's energy bills. We know investing in local transportation will reduce codependency. We know a lot of these things work. Let's take action.
Thank you very much. All right. So moving on. Let's see. We just talked about transit. Sorry, I got a whole bunch of new questions here. Let's go to this one. Okay. It's short, sweet. How can we get every home in Phillips adequately insulated? Gary.
That could be a recommendation for the green zones. And that's an example of the kind of thing that we could start doing right now. The city of Minneapolis can help with financing home energy improvements. We can work with the utility company to designate a pilot project in a low-income area to make sure that property owners and homeowners can invest in their buildings in ways that reduce their utility bills. We can also make sure that we're doing inclusive financing and inclusive bill paying so that when people are paying their utility bills, these have the lowest default rate of any type of bill pay system in the country. Less than 0.5% of utility bills ever go into default. So this is the mechanism that we should latch on to in order to finance community-wide projects. The city of Minneapolis can also help with capital investments in an area for affordable housing, whether it's Little Earth United Tribes or whether it's working with private homeowners and rental property owners. And then the last is going to be new construction through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to make sure that whether it's new construction, make sure it's energy safe and energy smart, or taking naturally occurring affordable housing and financing in a cooperative model energy improvements for low-income renters. So they're not displaced through gentrification as we make these investments, but they're able to continue living in their homes and enjoy the savings.
Right, and then same question, Alondra, how can we get every home in Phillips adequately insulated?
Thank you. So one of the recommendations that did come out of the Green Zones Task Force is to look at precisely that issue in terms of energy resiliency and an environmental future that also helps our families improve their health and share the co-benefits of reinvesting in our communities through an environmentally justice lens. And so one of the really successful models that we have seen in the past is how neighborhood associations through city funding are able to support folks in the neighborhood to do upgrades to their homes. And so we need to go back to that. We need to figure out how to reinvest in that model because we know that the city right now is in a very good moment of growth. So we're not in the stages where, and I'm thankful that I hadn't had to be a council member when we've had massive budget cuts and laying off staff members. And so really, when today we have a mayor who is trying to grow our city by 100,000 residents, we need to look at those investment formulas and figure out how to distribute them throughout the city in a racially equitable manner, where the folks who are bearing the brunt of these climate change changes are going to be disproportionately impacted. And so we need to look at our financing systems and ensure that we're channeling them through the neighborhood association levels to ensure that they're able to empower their own community residents to make those improvements. Additionally, through the Green Zones pilot project that we're going to be designating, foundations are investing in that process. And so we have the McKnight Foundation and another foundation who are willing to put in money to help our city achieve the outcomes laid out by the task force.
All right, and then this will be our last question from the audience tonight, and there are a lot I didn't get to. So if you're able to stick around a couple minutes after we wrap up, I'm sure there will be people with more questions. But the last question will go to you first, and then you, and then there will be 2 minutes for closing statements. So the question, Alondra, 8 individuals own as much wealth as the bottom 60% of people on Earth. How can we reclaim money that our corporate owners have legally stolen from us to return that wealth to our communities?
I like that question.
There's a other side to that. Oh, sorry, I wrote the question. For energy and food security is the end of that question.
Return that wealth to our communities for energy and food security.
Yep. So I think that this is where we go back to how can we shift the culture of City Hall to stop depending on these sort of individual monopoly relationships with some of our franchise, some of our utilities corporations, but also figure out how do we popularize and reclaim our energy system. How do we make sure that you, the taxpayers, are the physical and the actual direct owners in those systems? And that's why I do support municipalizing our energy system. I do want to point out that through the Clean Energy Partnership, that is a way that we have a good leverage in negotiations in pushing those corporations to do the right thing with and for our communities. Green Zones will provide us another way to establish that by ensuring that the partners that we bring into the conversation, whether it's Peach Coffee or Headwaters Foundation or some of the medical corridor partners here, are all thinking about how do we bring back this money and really cooperatively share it with our community members. And so this is where the community solar model is really exciting, and this is why we as a city are partnering with other groups in the community to identify ways that we can make that a viable project at the water yard. This is also where we need to talk about the commercial land trust models and making sure that people are empowered and supported through both our policy and our budgets to invest in anti-capitalistic projects. Because there is, at some level, something extremely unsustainable about capitalism. And unless we are able to really reclaim that conversation, we are going to have to just continue to, fight on different fronts. And so with this cooperative models of economics and energy systems, we can hold our corporations accountable to a better future.
Thank you. And the same question, Gary. 8 individuals own as much wealth as the bottom 60% of people on Earth. How can we reclaim money from our corporate owners that have legally stolen from us to return that wealth to our communities for energy and food security?
So the power here is in the numbers, and the other 92% or 99% of it is, have the power to purchase to make sure that our money is going to create the economy that we want to see our children grow up in. Too many people have checked out of this economy. Too many people have lost hope of their ability to see that their children grow up in a higher quality of life than what they enjoyed or what their parents have enjoyed today. And the best thing we can do is build wealth in our community. Things like increasing the minimum wage, that helps. Working with small business owners to make sure that they succeed in helping us create a local economy that's sustainable, that helps. Helping with bulk purchasing of things like home insulation materials to spread the costs over more and more homes so that everybody benefits and more people can have access to programs like that. That helps. And we have to make sure that Minneapolis keeps a vision of a city that prioritizes the needs of these people, the needs of us in this room, the people who are going to be most hurt by Trump's agenda, the people that are most hurt by corporatization and privatization. And I want to make sure that every child growing up has the opportunity to live a life that's free of corporate exploitation, that is able to be a life that they determine for themselves, and a life where they can pursue their dreams without being told to stop.
All right, so with that, let's just give another round of applause. All right, last question of the night, the closing question. We'll go to you first, Gary. What innovative energy projects or plans in Ward 9 excite you and inspire you, and how would you use your role as a city council member to help them grow?
Well, I want to thank Minneapolis Energy Options and everybody who helped participate today, including the instant runoff voting Fair Vote Minnesota. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Louis. And thank you all for being here. Whether you support me, you support another candidate, or you're undecided, thank you for participating. I've never seen such large participation in local politics in all my years. I participated in energy exciting innovative projects in the 9th Ward. I remember the conversations about an eco-burner in Midtown Phillips, and the idea that we would be burning our waste, our eco-waste, from leaves to mulch, and we could create a district heating plant in the Midtown Greenway that would reduce energy costs. Really big vision, really problematic when you look at where the plume falls. I pulled my support from that project when the neighborhood also pulled their support from that project, and it didn't go forward. I think solar gardens are probably the most realistic next step for the Ninth Ward. I think we've got vacant land, we've got a supply of surface parking lots that make it reasonable to find space and the financing tools to make Ninth Ward the first ward with solar gardens that are widely accessible to low-income renters as well as homeowners to help reduce energy costs. So that's where I'm going to be putting my energy if you choose to work with me as your city council member. And I look forward to all the ideas that the community has about renewable energy and making sure that the Ninth Ward continues to be an activist ward that's laying out the ideas, implementing them, trying them, and showing the rest of the country leadership model from what an inner city can do to transform itself from a carbon-based economy into an economy of the future. I know we can do it because we've done so much together. We made this city a sanctuary city. We're not going to let Donald Trump take away our neighbors. We put cameras on cops, and we're going to make sure to hold police accountable. We can do the same with our energy companies. We can hold them accountable and make this future better for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
All right. Now, Alondra, what innovative energy projects or plans in Ward 9 excite you and inspire you? And how would you use your role as a city council member to help them grow?
For I would say the most exciting work that we're doing on energy projects in the Ninth Ward by far is the green zones. I mean, we've been working on this project for the last 3 years. We've faced a significant pushback on that vision. It was beautiful to be supported by all our council members today on the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. And green zones is a very unique approach at how to do environmentally friendly business development, job creation, and also making sure that we're localizing our food systems and that we are thinking about a transition, right, in our energy systems that will make sure that Mother Earth is protected and that our families are too. And so I can't reiterate how beautiful it's been to see so many people and volunteers ushering this vision forward, infusing it with their passion and commitment for change since day one. We had over 20 people participate in these focus groups and listening sessions that comprise the advisory work groups of the green zones. And so thanks to their work and expertise, we are where we are today. And that is a very unique project that nationally we will be leading. There aren't that many green zones throughout the nation. We will be one of a handful, and so we are really charting the course for energy systems in our communities in Minneapolis and in East Phillips specifically, which is a community that, as you know, has been underinvested in for years and years and years. And it's really a proud moment for me on the city council. And I'm trying to not dance and sing because I know the final vote doesn't happen until 2 weeks from today. So I'm just trying to contain my energy. But we will be having hopefully a celebration with our community members. Additionally, the Mercado Central on Lake and Bloomington is a project that was going to shut down the first month that I was elected in office because the city had neglected that project for so long. And I got to work with them, and every single month we meet to make sure that they're making progress, and they're looking at community solar investments. So it's really wonderful to be here today knowing that now they're making their bottom line, the city's supporting them 100%, and as the first Latino cooperatively owned co-op in an urban environment in the entire state, I'm really proud to be working with them to make those the energy transition that now they're going to be ready for.
Everybody, that concludes the formal question and answer period. So thank you all for coming out tonight and deciding to spend your Monday night here engaging in this important conversation. Let's do another round of applause.
How will we figure out the answers that the other candidate?
Mohamed will have an energy questionnaire that all the candidates will fill out, and we'll have it on our website, communitypowermn.org, and then you'll just see the, thank you. You'll just see it'll say ward forums and then questionnaires, and you can find all of the wards and all of the mayoral candidates up there. Thank you.
So we have to be out of this room in 5 minutes.